What's the creepiest thing you know about your neighbor? One of my neighbors occasionally paints her own realistic crosswalks around the neighborhood. It usually takes the city several weeks to remove them. I'm a big fan. One of my neighbors was actually caught on to catch a predator and it just called my dad to find out what the aftermath was. He got caught. He was on TV. The prosecutor didn't handle the case correctly, not sure exactly what happened, but all of the 40 people who got caught all got off scot-free. He still lives in my parents' neighborhood, but nobody talks to him and they rarely see him leave his house. A few years ago, my father moved to a new home in a very rich neighborhood. I learned from him that his new neighbors were swingers when they invited him and his current wife to their house for a welcome to the neighborhood party. This was followed by a revelation from my mother several months later that they also are my cousins on her side. My father has no clue. Also, they have cardboard cutouts of themselves in their basement. The current wife, the fourth one I believe, walks their pet cats in a bikini, and they have heart ponds in their front yard which the husband dug for his third wife. Gotta love neighbors. And family. Added to be clear, the cats are not wearing bikinis. Sorry to disappoint, Reddit. It's not really a secret. But my neighbor is in his yard digging a hole every single day. He's been doing it for years. The hole never gets any bigger. The yard never looks any different at all. It's like he just sifts through the dirt all day. Not really creepy, but it's really weird. Probably too late, but my old neighbor and his friend got in an argument over a girl. My neighbor then shot him and put him into a garbage can. They were in middle school. I recently moved from a dense townhouse condo-style neighborhood. The younger housewife across the street from me confronted my wife with her startling news that I was coming home in the middle of the day with strange women. My mom and sister were visiting. I found this neighbor on the front porch routinely smoking while pregnant, as her barely mobile blind dog ambled lazily through the street. The guy that lives above me regularly has a psychic over for readings. Judging from the noise, she reads a lot more than his palms. They're vampires. How I know this: they have no windows in their house. They only do yard work late at night, like 2 a.m. by the light of a floodlight. They have a child and a dog and I've never seen them in 2 years. My neighbor is big into dancing under a full moon naked on her roof. She is a very spiritual person. Apparently, my one neighbor stabbed a black man back in the day. His cavalier attitude was telling me that was a bit disturbing. All I did was tell him that I was on the track team. Added, since this got some attention, I'll elaborate. My neighbor and I saw each other from our respective yards as we were both doing yard work. I was about 20 at the time and he's roughly 60 or 70. Somehow, it came up that I played football and was on the track team back in high school. He asked me if I was a mile runner and, being a large individual, I played offensive and defensive line on the football team. I kind of chuckled and said that I was a thrower, competing in shot put and discus. That's when it got weird. It was then he said, "Oh, I stabbed a ant back in Midwestern town back in '62. He didn't really notice my shock and continued to tell me that, due to his assault with a deadly weapon and the obvious interest the cops had in the event, he transferred to another district far away and lived with distant family and relative hiding. At this school, the football coach also coached track and forced all the linemen to run the mile on the track team in order to improve their speed and endurance for football season. I haven't looked at him the same since. He consistently loads 2 black heavy-duty garbage bags into the back of his 2001 Toyota Camry at 2:00 a.m. on Tuesday nights. Leaves for 35 minutes and then comes back. I discovered this one night in 7th grade when I was sneaking out. Been watching him for a while now. I am the creepy neighbor in my neighborhood. I work nights, don't like to go out during the day, don't like to chit-chat with neighbors, and prefer to be left completely alone, not be bothered. I am an extremely private person with social anxiety. I can't feel comfortable unless I am completely alone. I used to live in a country where you could find solace just sitting in your backyard. Where I live now you can't do that without someone watching you. So I am the strange guy no one in the neighborhood knows much about. One of my friends caught her neighbor wanking in his living room window. He didn't stop. He smiled and waved. She now keeps her bedroom curtains drawn at all times. One of my neighbors is friends with Elijah Wood and sometimes they drink wine together on the stoop. My neighbor sunbathes naked in his backyard. Fortunately there are now pine trees blocking the view. Also, on an unrelated note, he is missing one of his big toes. The guy's GF is I wish they would close there. I live in a fourplex and know nothing about my neighbors except that my downstairs neighbors get into constant late-night screaming matches that eventually devolve into loud monkey sex. My neighbor is a hoarder and a dumpster diver. I live in the unit across from the community dumpster, and our newest tenant is in the dumpster every single day. She leaves her 2-year-old strapped into a stroller next to her. She seems to favor pieces of cardboard and thicker stock paper. She'll take the pieces and just trace the outline of the shape with her fingers while making a duck face. Also, I helped this bitch move in originally, and the day after I helped her move in, I realized I didn't move a single piece of furniture. No couch, no tables, no bed, no crib that I recall seeing. She's divorced, and for some reason she chooses to take all of her phone calls outside next to all of our. Of course she's a loud talker. I know the baby daddy is on the line when I hear something ridiculous shouted passionately like, "You said you were getting cheeseburgers, not hamburgers." My wife hates it, but I've taken to belting show tunes whenever I hear her outside. My goes back upstairs pretty quick after a couple stirring numbers. I know that my neighbor styles her pubic hair and dyes it pink. I found this out after she asked my mom, a hairdresser, if she had any extra dye, and my mom asked her what she needed it for. 3232, 3232. Every morning at exactly 5 a.m. he bangs his wife for anywhere from 3-4 minutes at an unbelievably steady rhythm, and then goes out to the patio to ride his stationary bike for half an hour. When he goes outside, she promptly vomits and takes a shower. Poor buggers are half past ancient and have been married forever. The look of disgust she has for him when we see them by the elevator is revolting. TL Doctor: Old wife is disgusted by old man. My neighbor was an abused child that left home at a young age that now moved back to the home she grew up in. Her abusive father recently died, leaving her a hoarder house to deal with, along with a lifetime of guilt from what he did to her. My neighbor is a compulsive liar. He will tell me something and then tell me something different within 24 hours. The number of jobs he has listed is too long to fit in his lifetime span, and they're all jobs that require more education than he has. He tells various other lies that really just don't need to be told because they do not affect our conversations. Till people actually know their neighbors. My parents' 80-year-old neighbor with tattoos on her face met her new husband through an online Mormon dating website, and they were married after 4 months so that they wouldn't be living in sin when they went on a cruise together. Let that sink in. My neighbor is a prostitute. She's a heavier lady in her late 50s and works the area out by the post office on my side of town. Every now and then someone will come to her house, flash their lights, pick her up, and bring her back 20-30 minutes later. Every morning she meanders down the driveway in her muumuu to get the newspaper. And she always has the same muumuu on when people pick her up. My neighbor, who is in his mid-40s, is very hard of hearing. Because of this, I can clearly hear him listening to porn through the wall. Literally so loud that the wall shakes. That's not the creepy part. Porn is normal and you can't knock the guy for his hearing. The creepy part is that I can make out the dialogue, if you will, and after years of this it has come to my attention that he has a foot fetish. My neighbor poured acid on the guy across the street's lawn. The guy across the street complained to the homeowners association about their basketball hoop they used to breed, and then subsequently beat the yippy chihuahua puppies to death and put them in the dumpster. My aunt finally called the police on them, because we could hear the puppy crying in pain, and they got arrested. Turned out, they also had a lot of drugs in their house, and beat their 12-year-old son. A middle-aged couple in my street got drunk with my dad a few years back and for some reason told him all about how they like to fuck wearing scuba gear. Home taxidermy of dogs in his basement. A lady in my apartment building pulls her laundry out of the washer with grill tongs. My neighbor was growing a dangerous amount of hallucinogenic mushrooms in his very small house for several years, until he died. His young son walked in and found his decomposing body taken over by hazardous spores. Our entire street was evacuated, and hazmat made everyone in our house go to the ER to be tested from the airborne chemicals in such close proximity. Here is one of the many local news stories. Lab 20,100,615 KT-BCW. My neighbor almost hit his grown daughter for accidentally hitting one of the bricks that was around his tree with their lawn mower. He saw me outside reading, and apparently thought better. The guy who lives behind me is a peeping Tom and has been caught looking into the other neighbor's windows over the past few years. He does my sister. I've been hearing rumors that there is some kind of pervert living in my neighborhood. But that's all the information I have on it so far. I'll ask my girlfriend to ask around her middle school to see if anybody knows who it is. They're 3 gay men who lived together and all got syphilis in the war. Also, they make great Christmas crafts. The caretaker of my local primary school has some weird kids. The older one used to stalk my sister on her way home from school, and after getting turned down, he sent his little brother around aged 9 to try get her to come and play with him. I think my neighbor goes onto the internet and posts things about me. I'm pretty sure my neighbors are growing weed. Perhaps it's time I introduce myself. My neighbor was early to mid-40s when I was a little girl, 49. He never had a girlfriend, boyfriend, or even a girl-guy friend over. He never had anyone over, other than my little brother and me. He would always rub my face cheeks and comment on how smooth my skin was. He always bought us gifts when we'd go back to school. He would take me up to his room, which had the windows blocked, which is when he introduced me to at the age of 6. At the time, I didn't see anything wrong with him, but looking back, I think he was as a pedophile. He wants nothing to do with my brother or me now that we're 17 and almost 19. At this point this will probably get buried, but I happen to know something very deep about my neighbor. So the family was in need for a while and their home was going to be foreclosed. The wife took it upon herself to steal the money to pay for their house. Where does one steal money from? Well, their church of course, and in a startling twist of events, she ended up becoming paranoid and burned the entire church down to hide the evidence. She's doing 20 years if not more now. That nail on the head guy is actor extraordinaire Richard Jaws Keel. Show some respect, you whippersnapper. I live in an apartment block and sound travels pretty well from next door, so I hear my neighbor jiggle his keys in each of his locks 7 times exactly before going out each day. There are 3 locks. It's been happening for the last 12 months, maybe not that creepy, but I pull my hair out at 6 a.m. every single morning because of it. My neighbor has 3 dogs, and I am certain she has sex with them. I like to masturbate in my garden while my neighbor watches. The best part? He doesn't know that I know he's watching. Even his dad watches. I mean, they have a second floor. They can easily see over my bushes. I do it at a specific time every day so that they know when to catch me doing it. I choose 4 p.m. every day. My parents' neighbors do border cross Morris dancing. It means they paint their faces black and wear black rag suits with pentagrams on them whilst dancing like crazy people. The fella came round in full kit to borrow something whilst my cousin from NJ was visiting. She answered the door and nearly shit herself. He might be a hedge fund manager. My neighbor has served jail time for threatening people off his land with firearms. The trespassers in question were joggers that had drifted about a foot from the road. I don't know anything about my neighbor Busy Road, but the fact that he's digging a massive hole in his garden like a mass grave. Worried. I had some neighbors when growing up that were crazy fanatic Christians, not sure what kind specifically. Me and my family was Mormon. They still are, I'm not, and they would constantly tell us we were going to hell and that they needed to save us. Oh, and they freaked out over the Y2K thing and stockpiled food and water and guns. When my dad talked to them about it in a just generally friendly neighborly way, not a mocking way, they made it clear that if his children, me and my 2 sisters and my brother, ended up coming to them for food after the disaster, that he would shoot us without remorse and without hesitating. And he was the more stable one of them. My next door neighbor is a hoarder who shits in plastic storage bins and keeps them in his storage shed. They are all very neatly arranged and stacked on top of each other, but the fecal matter is packed down tightly in the containers, so it is kind of like a fecal cake. I know this because I opened one of them up one time out of curiosity when I was borrowing some bolt cutters. He was actually featured on the show Hoarders, but they never revealed the fecal hoarding, so as far as I know, I'm the only one who knows. Hoarders came out to his house and tried to help him, but it was a complete failure and his house is still a mess. There are probably 15-20 bins, each one about the size of 3 shoeboxes. The shit is firmly packed down, so I would guess this represents at least a few years worth of bowel movements. He is actually a pretty stand-up guy who has a very nice house and attends my church. He just has a mental disorder like Humbox guy. In my old neighborhood there was a guy who took his canoe for walks. A lady moved in next to me, and every week following this a garbage bag or 2 seems to be missing after I put the garbage out. The truck hasn't come yet and my garbage keeps disappearing. I had to find out what was happening, and one night I stayed up late keeping an eye outside, waiting for my motion detector light to go off. When it finally does at like 2 a.m. I look outside and see this lady stealing my garbage. I have no idea what she does with it, what kind of panties she's wearing today. I hear my neighbor yell at his wife all the time, usually followed by loud crashing down their stairs. My grandma used to call the cops on him all the time, but the wife always denied getting beat, so I don't bother. I just give him dirty looks whenever I see him. This isn't that creepy, but my neighbor donated sperm to a lesbian couple he is friends with. His mother and father are extremely racist and one of the girls is black. They know about the kid, but they don't know that him donating sperm meant he fucked her for the purpose of impregnating her. He's also given blowjobs for coke before. He is gay, so it's not that weird to be giving a blowjob out, but he did it for cocaine. I lived with my aunt from the age of 11 until I was 16. Our neighbor, an old man, randomly sent her an email one day that said he enjoyed spending the day with her. He took her to lunch and introduced her to his coworkers who loved her, by the way, and other random sweet things. It sounded like a good day, right? The thing is, my aunt had never gone anywhere with our neighbor. She's never seen him outside of our neighborhood. The last line of the email revealed that he had been carrying around a picture of her and had done all of these things with her picture. Apparently my uncle had given him a picture of our family and he cut all of us out except my aunt. Oh boy, one of my neighbors shot and killed his wife who had terminal cancer. She was in a lot of pain and the police probably kept that in mind and didn't want to go after him. It was ruled a suicide, but she was very, very sick and could not physically shoot herself with a shotgun. This same guy was always crazy, weird, and creepy, But after this he just lost it. He started a meth lab in his house. It sucked, meth heads coming around our neighborhood at all hours of the day. When he was finally taken down for this, he apparently was molesting little boys too and was charged with that as well. He was only in prison for like a year. He no lives back in the neighborhood, but is under constant care for his severe mental problems he apparently has now. Worst neighbor ever. The couple next door only eat microwave meals. The microwave beeps at the same times every day. I find this creepy anyway. How are they still alive? The girl rarely leaves the house, probably goes out once every 2 weeks. Maybe I'm the weird one for noticing the shit. Haha. I can also hear them coughing, arguing, watching TV, flushing the toilet, etc. I can also hear the lady downstairs fart in her sleep. Not too creepy but creepy enough. A few years ago when there was the leak of members and supporters of the British National Party, I discovered that the neighbor across the street from us was not only a member, but a significant financial contributor. I also found out that there are tons more members in my town. This explained why if we pulled up onto the street playing any urban, black rap music loudly, this guy would come running out of his house and have an epileptic fit at us. Of course, after discovering his BNP roots, we made sure to tell all our friends to ensure they are blasting foreign music every time they come onto our street. A drug cartel leader, he had like 10 Corvettes and a Porsche. He was a nice dude but he was killed a few blocks away. Not very creepy but he might have killed someone in there. My neighbor has a cum box, he hides it in the bushes in his garden, and comes in it every morning at 4 a.m. My neighbor started throwing dog treats over the fence filled with rat poison in order to kill off our dogs because they bark whenever they see him. My mom found it while playing with the puppies outside. We had to search the entire yard every time a dog had to go out. Eventually we missed one and it killed my dog that I've had since I was 4. It was the first time I have ever seen my dad cry. The vet couldn't take him in to be put down that night so dad rolled out a sleeping bag and laid beside the dog all night because every movement caused the dog extreme pain. We had cops come in and do a stakeout cause we kept getting poison in our yard or the odd chocolate bar. We kept getting phone calls and letters from him threatening about the dogs and other bullshit. Eventually we took him to court and he got off on harassment and mischief. I have a Saint Bernard and to this day I'm still throwing piles of dog shit over the fence and into his yard. Edit spelling. This guy likes to watch me masturbate while I'm fapping on my backyard. My parents' neighbor doesn't think the Holocaust happened. We were good friends with the grandchildren and they would visit often. Then the grandma married the Holocaust denier and their grandchildren didn't come around anymore. My guess is their parents didn't want them to be around a nutcase. I think also one of them was married to a Jewish guy and some of his family died in the camps. It's really lame for my parents to live next door to the guy because my dad's dad helped liberate Dachau. My neighbor, I can see his hot tub from my bedroom window. Ew. My landlord's friend lives in a camper across the street, he poops in a bucket. Not so much creepy, but she's a terrible person. I saw her drive into my parked car. When I confronted her 2 minutes later, she denied everything and told me I was a filthy whore liar. Long story short, turns out she has no auto insurance and fake tags. The police still refuse to do anything. Body damage cost about $1,000. Fuck that bitch. Dresses as a clown in the middle of the night and shits in my mailbox. My neighbor killed her mom with a hammer. They supported Santorum. I guess I'm the creepy neighbor. I like to sit on my roof all night long in my underwear and watch the night traffic on the highway a few hundred yards from my house. It's nice and cool and peaceful and I enjoy getting lost in thoughts. The best part is when the sun comes up. It's always beautiful. My neighbor uses dial-up. There's this old guy, lives on our apartment complex. He doesn't do much except watch people through his blinds and occasionally sit or lie down on steps leading to his door. Oh, and he walks about going through people's ashtrays even when they're at home for cigarette butts. Turns out if you actually take the time to talk to him, he's the sweetest guy and only has the crazy guy exterior because after his wife killed herself he had a complete mental breakdown and had his kids taken away. Don't judge too quickly, kids. My buddy has a neighbor who asked his mom for a photo to put in the neighborhood scrapbook he was making. A few months later he asked for an updated photo, and she said no. Every single day he is outside, brushing his driveway with a broom, trying to get a glimpse into my buddy's house to see his mom. He is generally pretty creepy, but I feel bad for the guy. He is pretty lonely. He told my friend's family that if he ever disappeared or wasn't seen for a few weeks, for them to break in and on the basement counter there is a letter addressed to them with instructions. He isn't even that old, probably mid-50s. Kinda makes you want him to die so you can figure out the mystery, doesn't it? My only neighbors are 2 graveyards. And every once in a while I see this really old man with a sailor cap on, maybe a hobo, go out at midnight or so and piss on this one certain grave toward the back of the graveyard.